nikah, and I was sitting in Houston. So I was someone I knew, a sister, a family that I had known when I lived in Bradford a few years back. And so I agreed I would come. And obviously in the process, thought I might just come back to this center, which I very much enjoyed coming here in November. It was very nice to be here, and though I didn't meet most of you like personally, it was a nice turnout, and it was a very pleasant experience. And so, and I've been doing a lot of thinking. I do all that back in Houston. It drives my wife crazy, and students crazy, and I think I make myself crazy at times, but that's all right. And so, talk about, we thought we'd give a talk on something I've been thinking about. I've been giving some lectures recently at the Rice University in Houston, a series I started on evolution in Islam. And that's a really important topic, especially if you're living in the West or you're a modern person. No one can escape the theory of evolution and its significance in our culture, from education when you're in primary school, secondary school, to university. You're not going to escape this theory. And when we speak about it as a theory, though, I think we should understand it as a theory as when you go to university and you study atomic theory. When you go to university and study atomic theory, it's not because scientists speculate there are things called atoms. It's pretty much been confirmed there are things called atoms. So I think that evolution is not really a problem. This observation of the creation around us and drawing conclusions is not necessarily problematic. There are problems, and of course, when we deal with it chronically and textually from hadith literature and trying to understand evolution for Homo sapiens or ourselves. And of course, that is an area, unfortunately, where very few Muslim scholars give any serious reflection on. And but they will, I'm sure, in the future. They will precipitate in such a state that they'll have to respond in such a way that it doesn't leave Muslims bemused, befuddled, or in doubt of their faith. And I'm not going to talk about evolution tonight, obviously, but I did have these reflections on the ruh. And I think, as I mentioned last time I was here, that it's very important that we come to a personal appreciation of our existence. And I have always emphasized that in the past few years in any talk, that every person needs to really, truly appreciate their existence. And it's only when you start appreciating where you are contextualized in this cosmos, this ordered universe, the Greek word cosmos, to be ordered. When you can appreciate your contextualization, then you have the potential then to attain to greatness. And for us as Muslims, we have the benefit of a tradition through Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ that gives us a great connectedness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can help us to circumvent and rise above many of the doubts and issues that confront so many contemporary people. Issues of loss of faith, for example, in the Christian community, in the Jewish community, even in the Muslim community. There are people I know here in Bradford, personally, who have lost faith, have stepped out of Islam. And I sympathize and try to understand what they struggle with intellectually. That faith at times is not something that comes easy for everyone. And many of us who have faith, if we're really put on the spot, we don't have any answers for our faith, but we hold on to it anyway. Of course, we don't want to lose our faith. At the same time, one must be able to, I think, rationalize and understand why they hold on to unseen realities when so many voices around them are proclaiming a message that there are no unseen realities. And obviously I cannot talk about those things tonight because that in itself would be a long discussion. But think of yourself right now, and let's take modern cosmology as a science, a discipline of observing the universe and trying to understand the age of it. We'll start from there tonight. According to most modern cosmologists, the Earth, as they whittle down, not the Earth, but the universe itself that we live in, is probably, according to observations and calculations, 14.75 billion years old. When any person studies, and I'm sure of you in high school, you've taken science, if you know what an HR diagram is, an HR diagram is a graph of a star's size and luminosity. And through studying that, you learn that there are certain class stars. There's a standard group of stars, and there are some on the right side of the graph, these super giant stars. They're very large, but they're red stars. Red stars are very dim, by the way. Most stars in the universe are red stars. You can't really see them when they're very far away. But when they're very large, their size enhances their luminosity, so they can be seen. And these stars are important because it's in these stars, through fission, particularly up to the making of certain elements and beyond, when those stars go supernova, that they create heavy elements beyond iron. A little bit of science here. And there's an important purpose for this. The purpose is about your physical body. And it's about a timeline, and your place in a timeline, a scheme of events. When we understand the origin of the universe from initial expansion, and there's a period where there was no matter, everything was at a high energy state. In the initial moments of expansion, the first elements that will occur in the early universe are hydrogen and helium, the two basic elements. These two elements, particularly hydrogen, are the foundation of all the stars that we see. And it's in the process of fusion within the stars, the core of a star, under high pressure and extreme energy and high temperature and high pressure, that fusion takes place, so that hydrogen can be fused into a higher element and then a higher element, until the stars can only fuse to produce iron. And when a star goes supernova, if it's large enough, it's in that instance of extreme compression and then high energy that even higher elements are produced, such as uranium, for example, which is a very important element in our Earth to radiation that keeps our planet's core molten, creating a cycle of molten iron, and that creates a magnetic field, which Alhamdulillah, Allah protects this planet from solar radiation, cosmic rays, etc. You know, we are on a privileged planet. You can buy that book entitled Privileged Planet and read about living on a very privileged planet. We're the only planet we know of that there's life on, and that's very significant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Hayy, and it's a very unique quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to cosmologists, the elements that make up the body of Naeem here have been through a process of billions of years of activity, through stellar activity, stellar activity, to create the elements. Of course, by Allah's permission. Now, anything I say, do not think I'm just speaking atheistically without Allah in the picture. To me, there is no event except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is behind the event. But we take that as an assumption. No more than if I, drink this water, Bismillah, I don't think that the water quenches my thirst. Though I will say to you, thank you, brother, it quenched my thirst. But greedily, I don't believe it really quenches my thirst. I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quenches my thirst. But that's to understand, I don't have to constantly reference that to preserve my aqidah. So in case you're trying to find some fault, as many Muslims do, they're trying to scratch out a person's, it's not in a Muslim's akhlaq to be, he's the kind of person who, looks into other people's affairs so much and tries to criticize them. So understand what I'm saying. But I think that we have no problem as Muslims. And I think our views of contemporary cosmology through observation should be able, for us in our time of faithlessness, to really be impressed if we have another set of information that comes along to assist us through syncretic activity, through a It's a set of knowledge that allows us to enhance what we already are observing. And I believe that knowledge is revelation. Now, when you study classical theology, this is my first aside for tonight. When you study classical theology, one of the first things you're going to study is sources of knowledge. And the sources of knowledge, there are two types of knowledge. There's the divine knowledge, all knowledge which is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's alim. And this is uncreated knowledge. And then there is contingent or created knowledge. And it's either knowledge which is a necessary knowledge, or one that isn't. But sources of knowledge that we have to be certain about are, for example, your senses. You can say that cup is white. Most of us who aren't colorblind will say that our eyes perceive this cup as being white. And so our eyes are a source of positive knowledge. If I was to ask you at the end of the lecture, canvass you, what was the color of the cup I raised up, and we all ticked off white in the little box of the survey, we could pretty much assume that it was actually a white cup. No one would question that. It would be accepted as evidence in a court case. What was the cup that hit him on the head? It was white. Okay. So that's positive knowledge. And your eyes can give you that through the intellect. And Muslims and non-Muslims, atheists, agnostics, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, whoever it may be, will assert and affirm this is true. Our eyes can see that, as long as your eyes are not defective, that you can see it as a white cup. So that's a positive source of knowledge. But in the Islamic tradition, there are another source of positive knowledge, which is this audience here as a collective set of individuals who transmit that they assure. I asked many of you, what was the color of the cup? White. And so you say, so we have this ijma. An ijma, a consensus based upon a mass transmission of the observation. So many people saw it, and they transmit it, and so it's tawaturan, it's mass transmitted, and it's a source of positive knowledge. So this type of mass transmission of something where multiple sets of individuals observe it and then transmit what they observe is a positive source of knowledge. And so in the Islamic tradition and outside the Islamic tradition, this is not a problem. People accept that. But within the Islamic tradition, there's also another source of positive knowledge, and that is a prophet. A prophet of God, whoever it may be, is a source of positive knowledge. So in a set of sources of knowledge, we have a special one called the prophet. And the prophet, whoever it may be, I don't mean Sayyidina Muhammad specifically, I mean any prophet, is a source of khabar sadiq, of true narrative. He gives you true information. But his information is an individual. So he needs a supplementary knowledge, source of knowledge, which is observable, by which then you can confirm his source of knowledge as a prophet, and that's the mu'jiza, the evidentiary miracle. So an evidentiary miracle has to be in the confines of physically observable. So it also has to be something you can observe. So that the senses, the average human being can sense it through hearing, taste, vision, and they can make an observation collectively and confirm that observation, which then is to feed into the prophet, whoever it may be, his claim to prophethood, and hence his capacity to give you information which is true. So we understand this as Muslims, as in a very simplistic way of understanding sources of knowledge. So obviously then, when it comes to us as Muslims, our primary source of knowledge is revelation, and we affirm that because Muhammad ﷺ claimed he received it. If it was just a claim without a secondary source of verifying information, the mu'jiza, it could be a very remote claim. Therefore, the mu'jizat which he performed were public events. And they've come through us through mass transmission. The walking tree, splitting of the moon, water from his fingers, all these things like that, subhanAllah. And they shouldn't surprise us. They're not there to make you scream out subhanAllah, they're making you to affirm something. You know, not that I'm blaming anyone for being amazed, subhanAllah, I'm going, wow, that's amazing. But to be amazed and wowed is for your sake, not for his sake. You know, he's been praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. He has been made for what he's been made for. And if all of us were to turn our backs at him, will not increase him in what he is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It would just be to our own individual or collective loss in that. So in this timeline then, having said that, in this timeline, as Allah ta'ala, we can observe things. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَىٰ إِبْلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ, for example. Allah permits us to make nazar, to make observation. We look at the camel and how it was made. وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ, and to the heavens how they were raised up. We're to observe these things. So observation, observing the world around us is part and parcel of divine command in order to derive from it understandings. So from our observations, we are observing that this is a very ancient universe in relationship to my lifespan. I mean, what if I live to be 70 years old? What is the percentage of my lifespan in relationship to 14.75 billion years? It's about 0.00000, about 9 zeros down till you get to the 1. That's the percentage of my moment so far in this extremely ancient creation in relation to our humanity and the brevity of our personal lives. And that time in the vastness of the cosmos is where all these creative activities are going on to create the things that your physical body will be composed of. The elements. The carbon, the nitrogen, the potassium, the phosphorus, magnesium, lithium, all those common elements and rare elements that you are composed of. And you can't deny that you're physically composed of them. You can't deny that. And our observations are telling us this is the process by which Allah brings forth this type of things through His will. There's nothing wrong with that. To accept it, I think, as a Muslim. But there is that question which arises then for people, for philosophers, for scientists. Richard Dawkins has asked the question. You know, if he's the arch voice of atheism in Britain and the world today, he himself asked that question. You know, and the question is, how is it that carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus, the same things that you find out there in a lump of coal, or you find in a brick, or in the soil, or you find in the atmosphere, in the air you breathe, how is it that some of those molecules that are floating here now can be incorporated as I inhale? And not only are they incorporated where they become a part of a living organism, but somehow in that incorporation they also become self-aware. That question of the origin of consciousness is one of the most deepest questions and most profound questions that modern science is trying to understand. Why is it that matter can be self-aware? How is that possible? And so far, no one has an answer for it. If you're trying to look at it simply from a straight line materialist understanding, there is no answer yet. They can try to understand the mechanics of it neurologically, on the neuron level, on a level of what happens biochemically. But the break between the simple chemical processes that go on within the cells, and then the intracellular activity of the neurons in our brain, for example, how they still have awareness is still not known. But we can break down the mechanics of how things can be manipulated and tweaked and altered. How, for example, if a person have a brain injury which makes them lose apparent consciousness as we observe them, which doesn't mean they're not in a state of awareness of something, but we don't observe it. So our physical bodies are very much tied in with our sense of consciousness and the reality of consciousness, but the real mechanics and the formula of how it happened, we don't know. And it's thought maybe we will never know, or at least not in our current state of science and technology. And this is the things I've been reading the past few months and thinking about. So here you are in this continuum of matter and energy from the origin of the universe and to where the elements that you will be a part of your body are being created and then distributed throughout in some spot of the universe, and then coming together, and here they are on this planet, and bam, bam, here you are, and you right now are a living organism. And so there's a bridge between lifelessness to life, and there's a lot of time then to get you here. If it's taken about 14.75 billion years to get you to this moment of your self-awareness, that's a lot of time. And here you are. You are the self-aware entity. You are self-aware. And then this is your moment. This is your moment. This is your moment where you have a choice. And this is where this second source of knowledge comes in. Observational knowledge, and this second source of knowledge, prophetic knowledge, comes in. And this is a great gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran describes everything going to a state of fan, extinction. Modern cosmology tells us that too. We're living in a high time in the age of the universe, a time when life can exist, where there's stellar activity. But as the universe expands, as we're told, and as it continues to expand, everything, as space extends, everything between everything, the space between everything gets further. There's no center of it. Everything is just stretching out, and as space continues to expand, not into anything, but into nothingness, it makes its own space-time, and as it moves forward. And our observations are it's increasing, it's not decreasing. So the theory is that this will continue, and as space, the universe expands, matter as we perceive it, the stars and the clusters of stars that form galaxies will get further and further apart. Everything will get further apart. Theoretically, to a point where even on the atomic level and the subatomic level, the particles will get further and further apart. And so everything decays will decay and decay to a zero energy point. And there'll be no light in the universe, there'll be nothing, it'll just be darkness. No energy, zero energy. This is their theory. Sure, it's a long time in the future projected, we don't have to worry about it according to these cosmologists. It's not going to happen in our lifetime, although island. But this is what they project. So even modern cosmology is telling us things go to a state of total decay, a state of fan, a state of decay. And so this is the reality that we're living in right now. This is your reality, to decay. And the one thing about life, going back to Richard Dawkins again, the one thing about life is that life is the one thing that we know of in the universe which works against this decay. Living organisms fight against decay. That's what you're doing all the time. When you eat and you drink and you take in a carrot or your kufta or whatever it is, and you've consumed a no living thing, hopefully it's not alive when you're eating it, unless you're a Frenchman, they like to eat live things, or some Chinese will eat live things. We usually cook things as Muslims, we don't eat live things. So you are consuming something else, and you're breaking it down, incorporating into your body as you are alive, and that maintains your integrity. It fights against your decay. But eventually you're going to decay. You can't fight against it. There's no life, nothing that is alive that we know of that has such a life that it is a perpetual state of life. The only thing that we know of that is living, that is perpetual, is Allah. And like everything else in creation, everything in creation is created through Allah's sifat and His afal, His attributes and His activity. So not only are we existing because Allah exists, not only do we speak because Allah speaks, not only do we hear because Allah hears, and not only do we see because Allah sees, we live because Allah is Al-Hayy, the living one. And this is a gift to you. So when our Muslim theologians talk about this creative activity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't just sit there and oh, okay, this is really boring. This is the boring part of the class I don't like. You have to really understand the profundity of what is taking place for you to think about. Because unless you can appreciate this, you will never excel. Because it's by understanding some of these things, I think, and then you couple it with your understanding of who the Prophet ﷺ is for you, then you're going to be able to realize your potential. And you're going to make choices in your life now as young people to be excellent until you drop dead. And then you move on. You'll move on from this realm to the next one in fullness of life that's offered to you. So it's quite interesting then that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala offers an opportunity for living matter to transcend the natural state of living matter. And to give you an understanding of that, we go back to the seerah, we go back to a story I may have mentioned before. Last time I was here, I'm going to tweak it and make you think about this. The walking tree, the Prophet asked for mu'jiza, show me a miracle, Ya Muhammad. Tell the tree to come to me. The man goes, the mushrik goes and tells the tree to go to Muhammad. The tree walks to the Prophet, moves to him. The Prophet speaks to the tree speaks back to him. The Prophet offers the tree, if you want, I'll put you back in the grove you came from, or if you want, I'll put you in Jannah. He listens to the tree says, plant me in the garden. He said, Tughrisni fi Jannah, la abla fiha. Plant me in the garden that I will not decay in it. And what's interesting about that, you're going to say subhanAllah again. What's interesting about that is what the tree says. When the tree is made to a state, this tree goes through a progression, an evolutionary progression, very rapidly, you can sort of say. It goes from being sessile as a plant to being animated as an animal when it walks, to becoming human when it speaks, to becoming angelic when it chooses paradise. It goes through this quick, rapid succession of phases. And what it says, La abla fi, that I will not decay in it. This is very important. The tree understands it lives in a realm of decay. And yet it chooses at that moment, when it's given the opportunity through self-awareness and choice, it chooses at that moment to transcend the state of decay. But where? It's in Jannah. So there's a place where physical objects can be placed, matter can be placed, and that matter will be in such a state that it will no longer follow the rules of physics and the second law of thermodynamics for loss of energy, for example. It will be suspended. These rules of the physical realm that we live in are suspended. As the hadith says, when the people of Jannah are in the garden and the people of the fire, then death will be brought forth in the form of a ram, and death itself will immolate itself. It's like it basically, death is slain. The last activity of death is to kill itself. And so the people of the fire are no longer they're not alive. They're not living, they're not dead. They're just there. But the people of the garden, they're alive. And not only they're alive, you go back to the Prophet or something, you have the hope, the expectation. Because in the physical body which he was born in, it is a unique physical body, which you all know about. It's a body that goes through the processes as you observe. He was a child, he was an infant, he was born, he grew up, he grew taller, he grew as a man, and he continued to grow. He grew in stature, he grew in intellect, and when he was 40, he receives revelations, and then that's a total transformation there. It's unique. We'll get to that vertical intersecting of the world from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through wahi. And then he is in that physical body which goes to Jannah, and that body is the same body which when he tastes the death that every human has to taste, if that body doesn't decay. So his body already is a sign of the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The promise of the perpetually surviving physicality which we are offered. He is the archetype of that. And of course, he will be resurrected, the first to be resurrected. He had all these sabakat, all these first things that with him the first to be resurrected, the first to lift his head up, the first to give intercession, the first to arrive to Jannah, the first to enter Jannah, the highest place in Jannah. He has all these first things to him. But that's another story in itself. And your nisbat with him, your affiliation with him, then is very important that you are able to cultivate that. But to cultivate that, you have to appreciate it. You know, you can't appreciate this affair unless you really think about it. Otherwise, your life will go on, maybe as it goes, all down meandering here and there. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought you forth out of non-existence. We mentioned that last time I was here. It offers you a choice. And He has done this in a process of embodiment. The embodiment of the soul into the physical, called the physical frame. This union of these two things which come together. Now obviously, not everyone, as you know, if you talk to non-Muslims, they'll have lots of theories on consciousness, the mind, and issues of the soul, even if you're in a faith tradition. There are some contemporary Christian theologians who are very brilliant. I think they have some interesting things to say. They have some interesting, not only that they're probably very worthwhile to listen to, at the same time, some of them I don't think are necessarily, but unfortunately there are also those who want to understand that the soul itself is an evolved thing in a natural process of evolution, that the soul itself arises eventually in the creation of God as an evolved entity. As Muslims, we fall in a position of the ruh, the soul, as being not simply something that evolves, but as something which is gifted. It is an outpouring from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what I mean by that is we have our classical understanding of two realms, Alaman, two realms, Alam al-Amr and Alam al-Khalq. The Alam al-Amr, what we mean by that is those are realms of existence. They're contingent, created, but they're not created where something is merely transformed. For example, the Alam al-Khalq, which is the second realm, the realm of Khalq or creation, is like your physical body. Your physical body exists because it's able to receive other physical things, elements, molecules, from an outside source, incorporate them into its own structure, and maintain itself. You can expel others and incorporate others. And so this is a realm of transference. The realm of Khalq, of creation, is a realm of transference. So you can take a wool shirt and wear it as a wool shirt one day. You can grind it up. You can put it in your compost heap. Your shirt as an organic material will break down, and then your shirt will become mixed with the soil, your organic compost. You'll then place it on your backyard garden, and you'll plant your tomatoes and your cucumbers, and the molecules of the shirt will all be incorporated into the tomatoes and the cucumbers you're growing, which you're going to eat. So eventually the shirt you ate, you will be eating it before you eat it. So this is the realm of Khalq, this transference of things. But the realm of Amr doesn't work this way. The realm of Amr is just a kun. It just exists. And it exists by Allah, without any preceding thing. And that includes Jannah, the Nar. For example, these are the realm of the Amr. This is what our scholars mean by that. And it also means the Ruh. The Ruh itself is also from this realm. It is from this realm of divine command. And that makes it unique. That means it has a unique status with Allah. And we have to appreciate that status. Because in its status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it also has the capacity of us doing something with it. So Allah says, you know, when in response to the Jews of Medina, of Yathrib, before it became Medina, when the Quraysh sent their representatives to inquiry among these Jewish scholars of Yathrib, Medina, whether Muhammad was a true prophet. And of course, one of the questions was, ask him about the Ruh. And one of the reasons our scholars say they wanted some knowledge about this was because, well, they just didn't know. They were curious about the nature of the ruh, but their own scriptures were not clear. So they were trying to, if he's a prophet, maybe we'll get something from it. We're going to benefit from it. What he says. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, the questions, who were the young men of the cave, and that's in Surah Al-Kahf, you get the whole narrative there, and what is the soul? What is the ruh? Was one of the questions, and who was the man who traveled from one end of the earth to the other? That's Dhul-Qarnayn, for example. So they get this narrative, and of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the Prophet to say, inshallah, there was a delayed event, revelation there, an instruction there for all of us to say inshallah before we open our mouths and say things. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mention, it's interesting, he doesn't mention in Surah Al-Kahf, it's in Surah Isra, where the answer comes in. Because if you read Surah Isra, is what's interesting as it leads into Surah Al-Kahf. They're like two surahs that go together. And so Isra is an interesting surah because it talks about the ascension of the Prophet ﷺ, and a lot more of these sort of ruhaniyat type of discussions there. And then when you get to Surah Al-Kahf, it's more of these earthy discussions there of the young man of the cave, and Dhul-Qarnayn, and Musa alayhi salam, and Khidr alayhi salam. So there's this narrative of these activities in the world between peoples of faith and prophets, etc. But Surah Isra is a really interesting story. You should read them sequentially. But in Surah Isra, Allah says, yes, they ask for the ruh. And of course, we have to understand, yes, there's a plural here. You got Arabic up there. Everyone's learning Arabic in this place, apparently. So it's the plural, third person singular. They are asking you, Ya Muhammad, about the ruh. And so, say, this is singular, you, yes, Muhammad, you're going to tell them, respond to them, Ar-ruh, what is the ruh? Min amr Rabbi, it's from the affair of my Lord, the Amr. Now, Amr, of course, is understood different ways. One is an item, an affair, that means it could have the idea of a status, of precedence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other is, as some have understood it, is an Amr of Allah. It is a kun in origin, be, exist in origin, entity. It exists by this way. Nothing precedes the ruh, like your physical body having precedence before it. Nothing precedes it. It's just created by an Amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, you are to say to them, you've not been given much knowledge of it. So, some Muslims in our community out there, in some of the bookstores are reading, and you have these discussions about the ruh and all that stuff, and the ruh, discussions of the ruh, taking discussions of spirituality, might take discussions of tasawwuf, this chain effect of discussions until, some Muslims in our community say, well, you really shouldn't be talking too much about the ruh because Allah hasn't given us much knowledge. But it's really decontextualizing the verse. The verse Allah is responding to the Jews of Yathrib, not to the believers. The believers can have a lot of knowledge, and in our tradition is that when you have a lot of knowledge, not me up here, but we being our history of Muslim scholarship, that there's been a lot of reflection, not only reflection but also ilham, because ilham is also a source of knowledge, and considered understandings of the nature of the nafs, the ruh, we call the nafs, the heart, etc. So anyway, the ruh is this uniquely created reality. And our scholars like Imam Ghazali and others have talked about the ruh is that which animates you, that gives you your senses, the fact that you can have your intellect that works through your physical senses. My Shaykh in Turkey, Shaykh Mahmoud, in a very simple way he explained it, he demonstrated that to me. He said that when you're asleep, your eyes can be awake. I mean, how many of you know someone, they sleep with their eyes that are awake? It's sort of weird watching someone sleep with their eyes are awake, And you can sit there and shine a light in their face, and you can do stuff, and their eyes don't blink, and their eyes are functioning perfectly. But the ruh isn't there. Because just as the ruh is of the Amr, it has this, as many of our scholars have said, that the ruh is also la makani, is without physical locality. So you can't say that the ruh is here, or is it here, or is it here. Now obviously, our scholars talk about the qalb, the heart, as being a center, or the ruh is. But let me help you understand how you can maybe understand in a contemporary metaphor. When you study quantum physics, what's one of the problems about the electron spinning around the nucleus of an atom? Do you know where it is actually? It's probability. There's a probability where it is. You know, on the quantum level, probability reigns. You have a probability of where the electron may be. When you're observing it, you can't have any direct information about it. But when you observe it, then you can't discuss where it is. So it's a weird, kind of quirky kind of level of understanding. So if, for example, we're talking about the ruh, and if it's la makani, as our scholars are saying, then why is it that you, for example, focus on your heart when you do dhikr? Why do you do a physical activity of focusing on your heart? Well, part of that is because, you know, you can't even conceptualize something which doesn't have a location. How can you conceptualize something that doesn't have a location? Because you live in a world where everything has a place. You are created physically to understand things locatively. So it's hard for you to imagine something that doesn't have a location. So if you focus on a spot, for example, your heart, as a activity, a spiritual activity, it doesn't necessarily mean that the ruh, as a spiritual faculty, is really there. It's just a means of perhaps getting a focus of attention for you, in order that you can actually focus. Because if I was to cut my fingers off, like I cut my fingers off, I don't lose part of my ruh. If I'm in a car accident and I lose my two legs, it doesn't mean that much of my ruh has gone with them. It doesn't work that way. So it's la makani. And this is because it has this reality which is beyond the realm that we exist in. It's a realm of amr, divine command. It's like you try to understand Jannah. Where is Jannah? Well, we know there's a bit of it in that place there, and in the picture there, because we're told there's a little bit of it there, between his mihrab and his mihrab, his minbar, and his home, Sayyidina Aisha's hujra. There's a bit of Jannah right there. But when you walk there, you know, you're entering into another realm. You're physically going, unless you're maybe one of these people with basira and you're one of the awliyaullah, maybe you have some direct perception of it in some way. But most Muslims go there. They take it on faith that he spoke the truth. That they're really in a unique zone. You know, they're in the realm of this co-joining of two realities. But we take it on faith unless you've perceived it. You know, unless you can convey your perceptions to someone else, that's what you take it on. So Jannah itself is in a sense, an existent reality. But its reality, as physically as we understand it, cannot be as we understand physicality right now. It is, but that's not a problem for us as Muslims either, because even if you read Brian Greene's works on string theory, you'll understand that on the string level there are 11 dimensions. And we all contain within us those 11 dimensions on a quantum level. And you can't even imagine that intellectually. What does that mean, 11 dimensions? You know, 4 dimensions, including time, I can understand, but the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th dimension, folded into me, I contain them, even that we can't understand. You cannot conceptualize, you can't even draw that. You can try to understand it mathematically, but unless you're a good mathematician, it's still just a representation of an abstraction. But anyway, so even for us as Muslims, to realize these things that seem sort of quirky, they shouldn't really disturb us, because the world we live in on many levels is very quirky, even though we don't normally perceive it that way. So this ruh then, our scholars talk about, and I've got some notes here I need to go through. I have a lot of things I can talk about. I don't want to drag this out, but I'll try to share it as much as I can as time permits until you start dozing off. To understand one aspect of the ruh some scholars talk of ruh in two ways. There's a ruh sultani and a ruh haywani. The ruh, and to help you understand that, the ruh sultani is your ruh as it is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the ruh has been incorporated, it has been embodied into a matrix of the physical body. And when it is matrixed in the physical body, the ruh has to have an activity with that body. And so they speak of the ruh, which is the ruh haywani. And to help me understand that, as I try to understand Allah through his that, the essence of Allah. For example, when I say the word Allah, what do you understand from that word? When I say Allah, do I also mean Rahman? Yeah. When I say Allah, do I also mean Al-Khaliq? Yes. When I say Allah, do I also mean Al-Bari? Yes. Al-Musawwir? Yes. Al-Jabbar? Yes. Yes. All those attributes and those sifat and qualities are all contained within, they are all contained in the word Allah. They're implicitly there. But the word Allah, though, is the essence, the name of the essence. And the essence is very abstract. The essence is what makes something what it is. There is an essence that makes Naeem his quintessence, which makes Naeem Naeem and distinct from everyone else out there. And so there's that, the that of Allah. There's that, the that of Allah, which makes Allah distinct from everything else. Yet in that, the essence of Allah, is contained all the sifat and all the divine af'al activities. So in a sense, your ruh sultani mediates itself with the ruh haywani, where through the ruh haywani is like a derivative of the sultani ruh. And it's through the ruh haywani that you have your sense perceptions. So it's like a derivative of it. And so our scholars try to say, if you want to understand that, understand the essence of Allah and divine sifat and af'al, divine attributes and activity, you'll understand the ruh sultani in relationship to the ruh haywani in a similar sort of, one is comprehensive and inclusive of the other is derived from it. Of course, when we talk about Allah and His sifat, His af'al, and His that, we have to be very careful because in His af'al, in His sifat, in His that, He's not like His creation. So you have a limit in how you can use that type of analogy, by the way. So I don't want anyone to come to me afterwards and say, but you really be careful when you say that, Because you can't really make these type of comparisons between a created thing and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's true. But, we do this so we can understand things. It's like when Imam Rabbani, when he talked about, he took an amber, a stick that was burning, and then he twirled around in front of the students. He said, do you see a circle there? Yeah, you see a circle. Is it really there? No, it's not. It's just a series of points moving. You observe it as a real circle. You perceive it as a circle of light, if I spin it long enough, right? But the reality is, it's not a circle of light. He says creation is like that. You perceive it as real, but it's maintained by Allah. There's like an illusion to that. So we can use, and how Allah creates things is like that. There's a creative activity behind things. Allah is the constant creator, which gives you the illusion of something truly independent out there as you perceive it. He says, we use these analogies because this is the only way we can understand things, is through analogy. When you talk about Allah as Allah is, all words stop, intellect stops. You've got to kick back because you hit the roof of the aql, which is confined to the world that we live in, and you can't transcend that. And that's why he said also, as an aside, that's why the Prophet was the most tried of the prophets. It wasn't because he he didn't have, his pharaoh was Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl had a few clans people of Quraysh, he could muster a small army, but he wasn't like Pharaoh of Egypt, who had thousands and tens of thousands of soldiers, and a whole kingdom behind him. The Prophet, thorns were thrown out in front of him, right, when he was in Mecca. But he wasn't cast into the fire like Sayyidina Ibrahim. And he was stoned by the children of Ta'if. But he wasn't like Sayyidina Musa, who was stoned where the stones piled up on it. So you can't talk about the Prophet being tried in the same way as previous prophets were. But Imam Bani says, almost to him, that he was tried because of divine love. He was so knowing of Allah, indeed the most knowing and fearing of God amongst you is myself, he said. He knew God so well, and yet he was at the edge of contingency. Like if this is creation, and as creation can perceive God, he had the greatest perception of God, which meant he had the greatest love of Allah also. And when someone loves something, they desire that thing. But Imam Bani said, but be careful when you speak of the Prophet that you don't do with him what the Christians do with Jesus and push him out of creation. So he said, that that's why the Prophet was so tried. It was his love, his being beloved and love. He was the beloved of Allah and his loving of Allah. And he's tried, as lovers are, in this type of separation from their beloved. Because contingent things are always in some way separate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah is Allah. And nothing of his creation can be compared to that. And this is his status, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's also a sign there for you, by the way. Because as he is in that status of his, the more you cling to him, the more you arrive to what it is to be true. So you can expect tribulations, by the way. If you love him, expect people to ridicule you, laugh at you, mock at you, give you a hard time. Love has a price. There's the price of the stone, the mocker, the one who puts you down in public. And there's also the trial of love itself, where love is something which pushes you onward and onward in amazement of your beloved, that you want more and more and more, but you can't never get enough. And Rasulullah was and could never be compared to anyone to him, of a beloved and a lover of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll never understand what it meant for him to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At least not in this realm. And I would understand never, because this was his status. Anyway, so our ruh, our arwah then are incorporated, and they're mediated. Our ruh has a mediator. And the mediator of that is your heart. The heart is a mediating organ, a spiritual faculty that mediates the ruh and then the nafs. Because the nafs itself is derived partially from the ruh as a aspect of your physicality. And the heart then mediates between the ruh and the nafs, and therefore there's great emphasis in our tradition on maintaining the relationship with your heart. Ghazali spoke about the ruh being located literally in the heart. And he meant the samburi heart, the cone-shaped morsel of flesh. And he wrote about this in his works. This was his opinion. But of course this idea of a physical location, so you can have at least some attention to it. So, with the ruh then, the ruh has its stages that we all have to go through. And I'm going to go through these stages really quickly. So there's 5 ahwal, states of the heart. I have them in my bottom of my notes down here. The first is halat al-adam, is the state of non-existence. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هَلْ أَتَى عَلَى إِنسَانٍ مِنْ دَهْرٍ لَمْ يَكُنْ شَيْءٍ مَذْكُورًا. Has not been a time when man was but not something that was mentioned. So we all came from non-existence. Our arwah, our individual souls, arrive by Allah's creative command out of non-existence. So you need to keep that in mind. And what's the benefit of that? Well, one of the ways to understand the benefit of that is that you appreciate your Creator, what He's done for you. And I say this a lot in my talks. I don't know if people are getting it, or they think that I'm just being too philosophical, or I don't know. I don't think I'm being very philosophical, but it's very true. You have to truly appreciate the fact that, let me find my notes here. I wanted to look at something that you came from nothing. And until you get that squared away in your mind, you'll think you're something. Everything you hold in your hand, every dollar, every pound, every sterling, your car, your wife, your chili, your whatever it may be, your chicken, I don't know what you own, whatever you own has its origin from nothingness. So that's its foundation, is zero, non-existence. It has no true value in a sense. So appreciate that. When you realize everything came from nothing, and everything is going to a state of decay, you don't, at the end of the day, place your hopes on too much, in except as much as it's a means for you. It's a means for you to get to somewhere. Then you're wise. Otherwise, you might end up in a state of delusion and put a lot of emphasis on it. Oh, I've got wealth, I've got a lot of things, mashallah, and you feel comfortable. And that's a very deluded state to be in, is to be too comfortable in this realm. Because you never know, some guy may drive over you crossing the street, and you'll lose it all. As has happened in this town, and we all will have friends who passed away. They were comfortable, and they had their beds and their food and their lives, and now Allah bless them and have mercy on them, but they're in their graves, and we're following them. We don't know when, but we're following them. So the first thing is, when you understand that your first state of your soul is that you came from non-existence. So appreciate the fact that Allah brought you forth. That itself is a meditation you should be doing. The second one is Halatul Wujud. Hadith Qudsi khalaqt arwah qabla ajsam bi-alfayn sana, or ajsad. Allah Ta'ala in a Hadith Qudsi says, I created the arwah, the souls, 2,000 years before I created the physical body. So the arwah existed before physical things existed, or physicality. So in a sense, your arwah, are very ancient things. Your soul is a very ancient thing. It has an appointed time for it to be brought into its body, where it is the nafakha, the breathing of the ruh into the physical body. So appreciate that. That's your second state. You are from a non-existence. You once weren't. Then Allah brings you into existence, but you have an existence which precedes your physical body. The third state is halatul ta'alluq, and that's when Allah says, "Nafakhtu fihi min ruhi." I breathed into him, that is Adam, of my ruh. And this idea of ruhi is not necessarily Allah's ruh itself, as some Christians who try to understand. They try to twist the statement of the Quran in some type of Trinitarian usage. But the idea of the ruhi is like Baiti. The Kaaba is Bait of Allah. It is the Naqatullah, the camel of Allah. These are things with idafa, like you learn about idafa up there when you learn your grammar. The Bait of Allah there, it's ascribed to Allah because it has value with Allah, it has place with Allah. So this ruh has a place with Allah, a status with Allah. So Allah nafakhat, He cast into Adam alayhi salam from his ruh, that is this thing which is his possession. So this is your third state, that you have ta'alluq with your physical body, which you're in right now. So you're not in your third stage of the 5 ahwal states. The fourth stage is the separation. When your ruh is separated. Every nafs shall taste death. This is when your ruh will be moved on to stage 4. And you're going to separate from your physical body. And no longer will be animated. And decay will kick in. As long as the ruh is there, decay is stayed off to the processes that the ruh maintains. And that itself you should be mindful of its unique status, because it has the quality of Allah has given the ruh a quality from His name, Al-Hayy, the living one. And when that when that ruh is separated from the physical body, life itself is removed. That aspect of the divine connectedness to Allah's Al-Hayy is taken away from the physicality which it was once associated with, which is your body. And then Al-Halata I'ada, and that is the state of return, is when you are brought back to the physical body. When your physical body is recreated and the ruh is brought back to it. سَنُعِيدُهَا سِرَاتَهَا أُولَى. So we shall return to its original state, Allah says. So you're going to be returned back to Allah. And these are your states. But this ruh has its ancientness. Look at it. This ruh has its ancientness to it. It's created for the physical body. It's created from non-existence. It passes through physicality. It's separated from physicality. It's returned back to the body, but when it's returned back to the body, it has a unique state with it. And that new state is conditioned upon what was the state of the soul when it was in the third state, when you were associated with your body. What did you associate with in that period of time? And this is your moment right now. So here you have this timeline of creation. 14.75 billion years. Wow, that's a long time. Let's take it for granted. Let's take this Hadith Qudsi, Alf A Sana, 2,000 years. Let's extend it. Let's say that before the quality of the body was created, this arwah existed. The ruh existed in some form. As a point of discussion. And it's waiting in stasis to a moment. In a long period of deep time, through a matter-energy continuum. Until a moment comes where, preceding your moment now, in your physicality, in your physical body, Allah had prepared vertical insertions into this timeline of revelation. Points in that timeline. In a very brief period of human history. Points. In a very brief period of cosmic history. Points of insertion from the Creator. And that's through divine speech, through words from God. God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to use this word carefully. Allah engages His creation, His material creation, with divine speech in a unique way called revelation. And that revelation is to engage creatures, humans, so that they can choose to transcend this timeline of this continuum which they find themselves in. You can extend yourself from it. You can escape from it. And that's the habl of Allah, the rope of Allah. And it's really like a rope. You imagine when you watched those newsreels of the tsunami in Japan. Did you guys watch those? It's horrific. And some of the film footage is amazing. That one village that was just like, you just watch it from the hilltop being swept away. That's like your life. That's your timeline of your life. Imagine the value of having a helicopter flying by with a rope at that moment. And yanking you out from that death and destruction. That's what revelation is. It's a rope extended to yank you out from the physicality and the reality of the death of physicality, yanking you up, but yanking you up physically. And this is interesting because the arwah were created before the physical bodies, but Allah in His generosity, this is very interesting I find, Allah in His generosity is even making allowance for Christians. Some people believe, for example, when you die, it's a spiritual resurrection. So it's just this noumenal reality, this nomos in Greek, this soul. So heaven is this place of souls, disembodied souls, floating around, playing harps, glowing. You all see in the cartoons, you know, a cartoon cat character dies and goes to heaven with wings, and you sort of like, you see through him, you know, and sitting on clouds, you know, in heavenly realms. It's not like that. It's interesting. The generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only to create something, kun, Jannah, a place, the things of Jannah are physical, but their physicality is unique. It's created by just the command of Allah. No preceding creation. It's not built upon like Legos, you know, building blocks before it. It just exists. There it is, it exists. But this physical body of mine is given opportunity itself out of divine generosity to be yanked up and pulled out of a stream of death and decay which most physical things are headed for. And that's very generous of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That He wants not only that thing which is created by divine command, the ruh, to be interjected into the physical body, but at the same time, that same interjection to commingle with it, and in the same process to allow the whole complete individual to attain to life.
He honors that even. With everything else, with Haywanat. I learned in Turkey that on the Day of Judgment, everything will be resurrected. But then everything will be turned to will be destroyed. The animals and things will be destroyed. Destroyed, destroyed, destroyed. Except the physical body. You know, there are certain animals, maybe the dog or the young people of the cave, and some scholars say, well, that dog will survive because it's unique. And you know, the scholars discuss those things, and those are interesting discussions, but let's just talk about generally. Things will be destroyed. Everything you know physically will be destroyed, except your body. Allah is so generous that He even out this vastness of this matter and whatever is contained in this vast universe, some of it will be selected and allowed to continue in existence. But in the fullness of existence, just like that tree. Just like that tree. All the other trees in that grove of trees, where are they at? What happened to them? They were cut down. Is that like a person making the adhan, or is that the adhan just going on?
Sorry.
That's all right. Play. That's a nice adhan. Wow, it's outside in the car lot. Yeah, subhanAllah. So there you have that. What was that at? Adhan threw me off. Yeah, that tree. So all the other trees, what happened to them? They were cut down probably. They grew old. They died. They were turned into timber, maybe made into a pillar in a house or a ceiling beam. And where are they at now? They're decayed and they're gone. But here's this one tree. And the Prophet said, "Qad fa'altu." So I said, I've done it. And that tree, you will see that tree in Jannah. And the tree will be a tree where people from it, as the Prophet said, the awliyaullah will eat from its fruit. Who are the awliyaullah? They're the believers. It has a function in Jannah. It could have functioned in this world. The Prophet said, I'll put you back. Your roots will go down. Your fronds will expand, and your space will come out and produce fruit. Or if you want, I put you in Jannah, and the awliyaullah of Jannah can eat from you, and that's what the tree chose. So this isn't a metaphor for you to think this is your opportunity. This is the generosity of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ was a mirror of life-givingness to arwah, because he was the original ruh. And according to many of our scholars, that it was the first thing of creation, was this reality of Muhammad ﷺ, and everything else is a derivative of it. And so he has this life-giving quality, and you see that in his seerah. He picks up stones say subhanallah. He talks to the tree walks to him. He has this quality that emanates from him by Allah's permission, that he becomes a mirror and a vehicle and a transmission point of life-givingness. And so your association with him is why your bodies will be resurrected from your graves and inshallah placed in the Jannah, following his physical body. You will follow his physical body. Bodies following a body to a place where there's no more death, no more decay. Really appreciate this. And when you appreciate that, I don't want to take up too much time because I want more things to talk about, but I don't want to go on and on, which I could, ad nauseum. That you appreciate this embodiment of your soul right now. This opportunity of your life. I mentioned this last time I was here, you got to take it seriously. Appreciate the embodiment of your soul right now and what you can become. Don't take this religion and make it mediocre. Don't take this religion and do something with it which makes it, I use the word mundane. Don't make it mundane. You have to rise above this commonality as you live your Islam. Take risks with this religion. If you have classes in this masjid, you should be taking classes here. You should understand Arabic, you should understand it very well. Don't say I can't do it, you can do it. It's not like you can't do it, you can do it. Memorize more Quran, memorize Hadith, be reflective, come together and reflect on things, ask the hard questions and try to get the good answers for the hard questions. That's the only way, I've been a Muslim for a long time, more than half my life, and I can write out the questions that I need answers for, and I have a lot of them. And the only way I pursue them is by I think one is that you put yourself in a life mode which is God-centered. You are honest with the law. Don't play jokes with the law. Don't be self-deceptive. Be very upfront with the law, with your state. Never, if you've got problems, then you bring them to Allah and just lay them out there and say, Allah, this is my problem. I have these the problems, Allah, I need to get through them. This is impeding me, Allah, from this. This is keeping me from studying. This is keeping me from marrying. This is keeping me from getting halal income. And all those things are important for me to maintain my sanity, to maintain my health, my equilibrium in my life. And bring it to Allah. Don't be content with just your 5 prayers and the way you go about doing things, because life is really about change. It's a constant state of changes, except one thing doesn't change, it's the ruh. It's a fixed reality within you. You can either open up your hearts to, so it will have a profound effect upon you, and that will have a ricochet downward effect towards your physical bodies, or you will imprison your ruh through sin and rebellion and turning away from the Prophet ﷺ and whatever it may be, and that will then constrict you. I wanted to just read something here in the text I was reading, and Ibn Atta Askandari, he mentioned, he said, Baina al wa baina Rabb Bahran Amikan. He said, between a servant and his Lord and the Lord are two deep seas. Ahaduhuma Bahr Najat. The first is the sea of salvation. Wa huwa al-Quran. This is the Quran. The Quran is the sea of salvation. Man ta'alaq bihi najah. Whoever ta'alluq, attaches himself to it, like your ruh is attached to your physical body, is saved. Then Allah Ta'ala yaqul wa'tasimu bihabdillah jami'an. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, and i'tasimu, cling or bind yourselves, all of you together, to the rope of Allah. The second Bahr halak is the Bahr of the sea of destruction. Wa huwa dunya, and this is the dunya. Man rakana ilayha halaka. He who leans up against it, makes it his pillar of support, is destroyed. It doesn't mean you don't disengage with the dunya, but you engage with it. Like I learned today, people who put diesel fuel in their cars, they wear gloves, like wearing gloves. Or in Germany I was told that for diesel fuel people wear gloves because maybe the diesel fuel gauge is sticky from the diesel fuel, so they have gloves available. You should always wear gloves with the dunya. It's a realm of viruses and microbes, and they will affect you. We all breathe oxygen, right? But why are we also interested in antioxidants? You need oxygen to survive, biologically. But oxygen is a corrosive element. Where do you think rust exists? Right? So you eat lots of spinach and green veggies in order to have an antioxidant. You want to have a sink where all those oxygen radicals, which are floating around your body, which are breaking down on a molecular level. Many cancers are because of oxygen. You need it, but it also kills you. It's a love-hate situation with oxygen. That's how Allah created it. So the dunya is like that. You need it, but it's killing you at the same time. It gives you life, then it gives you cancer, and it gives you death eventually, because that's its normal state. It's where it's headed for. So anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has given you a great opportunity. Don't blow it. Seize it seriously. There's some other things I wanted to talk about, but next week I'm going to come in on next Saturday, and I'm going to be reading from Ibn Atallah's Hikam with some discussions on some of his beautiful words of wisdom, quote unquote, and share them with you. So if you want to come next Saturday, I guess at the same time, do show up. You're more than welcome to. And do show up. I suppose there'll be some food afterwards. I don't know how that goes. I'm not organizing it. I just said I would do it. And maybe I'll add some more stuff, a little briefly about issues of the rule I wanted to bring up.
and otherwise we'll just go with the hikam and have some reflections on some of the words of Ibn Allah. This is Sirruhu. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq, and alhamdulillah, Muhammad. Allah, we ask you to bless these young men and women who gathered here. We ask you to give those who have established this foundation and those who are teaching in it, those who are supporting it financially, those who are supporting it with their dua and their well wishes, with their intentions, those who are engaging in it to study, those who are teaching in it, that they all have your ridha upon them, Ya Rabbi. We ask you all that this is a foundation, a place of gathering where the Quran and the Sunnah are put primary, uppermost. We ask you all to give these young men and women deep faith, iman, which is saving them, but also iman, which opens up their intellects, that gives them the ability to tackle the problems that they face in their homes, at their schools, in their society here, the issues that confront people who lose faith because of the doubt and suspicion and the questionableness of faith in our time. Allah, that these young men and women will not have a simple faith, but that they will have a deep and profound reflective faith, a faith which answers the questions that need to be answered, a faith which asks the questions that need to be asked in our time. We ask you all to make their provision, their rizq, halal, whether it is of the food that they eat, the drinks that they drink, the clothing that they wear, the homes they live in, the cars that they drive. We ask you all to make them young people who make choices of simplicity, not to have avarice in the world, to take what they need from the world, simplicity in clothing, simplicity in food, simplicity in home furnishing, just a simple life. There are many people on our planet today, Allah. Let us be people who are prophetic. When the world is opened up to us, we only take what we need. This was the sunnah of your Prophet. So let us live this sunnah. Take what we need and leave the rest behind for other generations here on earth. I believe this is a moral responsibility in our time, Ya Allah, and I hope it's a moral conviction that you place in my heart and the hearts of these young people here. It's something that they can teach the people here in Bradford. We are all deceived by the dunya, Allah, in some way. When you raise the veils from our hearts and our eyes, that we see the dunya for what it is. There's a field by which we can plant the seeds of our eternity, Ya Rabbi. Make us good husbandmen, good farmers of our souls, Ya Allah. Make us men who wake up with the mind that we will make a profit this day with our souls. Let us not be deceived by those who come to us selling us shoddy goods and who want to just take us away from you, Ya Rabbi. We ask Allah to give us scholars of the Sunni tradition who will be able to defend the Quran and Sunnah as has been articulated by the majority of our scholars in our history, Ya Allah. That we are not taken in by Muslims who have the tongue of a lawyer and an advocate who argue a case, but a case of falsehood, and we fall into it, Ya Rabbi. So give us the ability to discern the truth from falsehood, light from darkness, faith from unfaith, life from death. We ask Allah to give us light in our hearts, light in our ears, light in our eyes, light on our tongues, light before us, light behind us, light above us, light below us, light around us, and Allah make us of light. Oh, let us know and experience the reality, the haqiqat Muhammadiyya, the reality of Muhammad Sallallahu, that we can drink from this reality, and drinking from it we find our own realities. Allah, a young man was once reading the Mathnawi, Ya Allah, and his teacher said to him, "What are you reading?" And he said, "I'm reading the Mathnawi, it's a very beautiful book." And the teacher said, "Put that away and go to the corner and do your dhikr, and then you will write your own Mathnawi." We ask Allah to make us people who don't rely only on what others have said, but you open our hearts up and our minds up by means of dhikr, by means of the Quran, by means of La ilaha illallah, by the means of Subhanallah, by the means of Alhamdulillah, by the means of Allahu Akbar, by the means of Salah and of Sawm and of Hajj and of Umrah and of Zakat and of Sadaqah, by means of acts of worship, O Allah, that we engage ourselves with you so much that we become people who can write books because of our experiences. And we're not just mere transmitters of what others have said, Ya Rabbil Alameen. And we will truly then leave an impression upon our families and our friends, not because we thought to impress them, but because you use us as people who leave impressions, Ya Rabbil Alameen. So Allah, I ask you to accept this dua for this needy one myself. I'm in great need, and I'm a traveler and I'm a guest here, so you are generous and you accept the dua of a traveler and a guest, Ya Rabbil Alameen. So accept my dua for these young people, this many women, for themselves, for their spouses, for their children, for their parents, for their grandparents, for their relatives, for their friends, for their neighbors, Ya Allah. Make this a gathering where we leave tonight with mercy having descended upon us, Ya Allah, with forgiveness being our gain this tonight, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Be written amongst those of Dhakirin and Dhakirat, those who are men and women remember you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Forgive us of our sins, O Allah. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
يا نبي سلام عليك، يا رسول سلام عليك، يا حبيب سلام عليك، صلوات الله عليك. أنت نور الله فجرا، جئت بعد العسر يسرا، رب ما أعلاك قدرا، يا إمام الأنبياء. أنت في الوجدان حي، أنت للعينين دي، أنت عند الحوض ري، أنت هاد وصفي. يا حبيبي يا محمد يا نبي سلام عليك، يا رسول سلام عليك، يا حبيب سلام عليك، صلوات الله عليك. يرتوي بالحب قلبي، حب خير رسل ربي، من به أبصرت دربي. يا شفيعي يا رسول الله، أيها المختار فينا، زادنا الحب حنينا، جئتنا بالخير دينا، يا ختام المرسلين. يا حبيبي يا محمد يا نبي سلام عليك، يا رسول سلام عليك، يا حبيب سلام عليك، صلوات الله عليك. صلى الله على حبيبه محمد وعلى آله وسلم.